Hey kids, welcome back to Farrell's Tutorials, the tutorial series. Well, it's not a series yet. Right now it's a coincidence. Next one will be a series, but this is my series where I show you how to do things that a lot of GMs want to be able to do but don't know how. Today, I'm going to show you a quick and dirty way to make dungeon maps. As usual, we're working with Photoshop. And what we've got here is an 8.5, show you our inches, 8.5 by 11 piece at 300 pixels per inch. You don't need to have it that big. Since I'm preparing this for our upcoming book, Parallax, I'm making sure it's print ready. If you're heading for the screen, then literally you just want to concentrate on pixels at 72 pixels per inch. Now, there's a couple neat little tricks I'm going to show you here to set you up with simple dungeon maps. And you can put a lot of work into them or you can put a little bit into them. This way is nice and quick, and you can make them as pretty or as ugly as you want. But the first thing you're going to want to do is make a new document. And we're going to just make this 1,000 pixels by 1,000 pixels. And this is so we can make our grid. If you notice, battle maps have a grid overlay. Well, that's what we're going to do here. Now, if you think back a couple tutorials ago, actually a couple videos ago, I mentioned that if you hold down the shift button while you click, you can actually make straight lines between point to point to point. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to come over here down to the corner. I'm going to make sure that I'm off the edge of that a little bit. I'm going to hold down shift and whoops. We're going to undo that because I need to turn my opacity and my flow back up because I've been doing other things since then. Hold down shift and click. Come up here to the corner, try to get it aligned. Shift and click. And over to this corner, shift and click. And what we have there is kind of an upside down L. Now, like with everything else we do, we're going to turn this into a pattern. So we're going to hit Control A for select. Come over here and define pattern. We're going to call this grid. You want to make sure that this has a white background, by the way. I tried transparent and learned the hard way that it messes things up and you can lose your grid pretty easily. And then you're going to come back over here to our main document and we're going to make a new layer. We're going to hit that with a pattern overlay. And that pattern overlay needs to be our grid. And once again, the reason we use patterns is because it's non-destructive when we do this. So we can literally we can adjust the size of the grid, we can do pretty much everything that we want to it. So just for the moment, we're going to hit that with a paint bucket so you can see that grid, so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. When we come back in here to pattern overlay, we can actually adjust its size several different times. I mean, we can keep it, we can make changes as we work. If we want to make it bigger, smaller, that's definitely too small. If I remember right for this size, what I was going to do is about 4 or 5%, not 45%, because I'm doing something pretty big, and you can always increase it by half steps. Oh, I'm sorry, it needs to be an integer. If you don't remember what an integer is, that's a whole number, but we'll come back to that here in a couple minutes. As usual, we're going to add a mask to that layer. And we're going to make that mask black to hide all that. And we're going to work in white. Now, for the other mapping tutorial, we did something, and while I'm doing this, I need to make sure that I've got my tablet calibrated, and that is the wrong monitor for that, and I don't know Oh yeah, because it likes to change on me. I'm going to calibrate this, sorry. But unlike our other tutorial where we're working with very soft, low flow brushes, we're going to do something that is hard and chunky and a little random. There we go, that's calibrated. But we have to build it first. So what we're going to do is we're going to come over here. Whoops, sorry. And come over to our brush panel, and we're going to reset our brushes. I want to get back to my base stuff because, as you can see, I've got a whole bunch of stuff loaded there. And this is the default brushes, so you can work with a lot of stuff there. But now you want to come in and click on square brushes, and that's going to give us this. Now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to click on the hard square brush, and I'm going to come over to my window and I'm going to select brush. Brings up this dialog. It'll show you what that looks like, and I'm actually going to make a new layer so you can see as we play with it. Transfer, I'm going to actually, no, I'm going to leave that the same. But what we want to do is we're going to do shape dynamics. We want to set up our size jitter. That's going to change the size of the cursor as we work. Up the minimum diameter just a little bit. Then we're going to hit it with an angle jitter. And this would have been when I was doing my town tutorial, I forgot. This actually will flatten out the brush, but we don't need it right now. And then we want to change our scatter just a little bit. So we get, if you look, that kind of looks like a rough cave wall. We just want to do that a little bit because we want that to offset. And if we do both axes, I'll show you the difference here. That one just scatters it all over the place. This one keeps it closer to our main set. I'm going to change that jitter just a little bit more. And that angle jitter just a little bit more too. Basically, this is just the randomness. And now we are literally ready to work with that brush. I'm going to keep this up so we can make some changes if we need to. But using my pen, I set that minimum, and look at that. Now that doesn't seem really impressive at first. I'm going to turn that down a little bit. Until you do something else with it. So I'm going to step back twice, actually 3 times, because I'll get rid of that new layer. We're going to come over here to our mask layer, make sure that our color is on white, and we're going to draw with this. Now, as you see, it's revealing our grid a little bit. I'm going to undo that. Well, first, what we need to do is come over here and add a stroke. There we go. And as you see, we've got a rough thing there. We're going to come over to our pattern overlay. I'm going to take that down to 5 because that's less than 5 feet right there in that entrance. Maybe 4. Nope, 4 is too little. And literally you just draw this out. You can sit there and play with it and draw chambers and everything. You can clean it up a little bit. And what most people don't realize about all this is you can literally come over to your eraser, select the brush you were just using, and it'll erase the same way that it draws. Now I got that a little too big. I also got my size jitter a little more than I wanted it. Yeah, scattering's fine. Yeah, we don't want to jitter those. And I'm going to turn that down just a little bit, size-wise. And now I'm going to make sure I'm on that mask, and I'm going to draw. Of course, nope, why are you not drawing? What the hell? Oh, That would be because I'm on my eraser. And I just made those adjustments to my eraser and not to my actual pen. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw, I think I'm going to bring it out here. And we're going to adjust that pattern overlay a little bit more because 5 doesn't quite give the scale I want, because I want this to be a massive complex. This is going under, no, I think I'm going to have to go with 5 because I can't do half, unfortunately. This is a massive complex that's going under a place we already have designed. And if you want, one thing most people don't realize about this is on the pattern overlay, we can actually drag it and make it a little better aligned that way to our needs. So we're going to make that a little wider. Of course, I'm drawing on the wrong section again. Make it just a little bit wider. And come up here, we're going to give it a little bit of a central area. Now, this is an area that we're storing a thing called the codex. Once again, I'm not going to tell you what that means. I know it sounds very impressive, but the codex is an important aspect of the parallax setting. You'll just have to buy the book to find out what it is. We might put out some information about it. I might put out some pictures. Hell, I may give you a tutorial on how to draw a book cover. But for right now, this is the living quarters of the keepers of the codex. So what we're doing is we're going to draw out some logical areas for them. This, for instance, is going to be their sleeping quarters. Just fill that in like so. Just scribble it away. Scribble, scribble, scribble. Now, I don't like this thing right here, so I'm going to come back over. You can either, if you want to make sure that you're not messing things up in your mask, you can either delete them, or since if you hit D, D will make these colors default black and white. X will flip them. You can just draw black over sections where you feel you messed it up a little bit. So that's their living quarters. I'm going to flip that back to white. I think we should have a storeroom. I'll make it like this, and we're actually going to make the storeroom a hidey place. Yes, hidey, that is actually a word. I'm actually going to bring that up just a little bit. And see how changing that changes the scale of what we're doing? And now what we're going to do is I'm going to leave a wall right here. And when we get into this, it's actually going to have, I want to make sure they have room to walk. We're going to put in some hidden doors, just because that's the kind of thing you want in dungeons, hidden doors and stuff. This wall will appear to be decorative. We'll put like a tapestry. We'll make note of it in our dungeon description. Now we need a couple other things. Since we're going to have monks living down here, they need to have a bathroom area. This will be their little sitting area. They need to have, I think over here they should probably have a kitchen area. And the main reason I'm putting this stuff down is so you can learn how we do all the things that we do. Give them a kitchen area. And from the kitchen area, the storeroom will also be their pantry. So we'll give them a little pass through there. We want to have a chamber for the codex. But up in the main temple, we've already got a fake codex. So what we should do, honestly, and we'll draw that out a little more here in a second, is we should have a little nook here and a fake codex. Just because we can't make this easy. And then I think a little library right here, and we'll give that a hidden door as well when we get to that point. You know, it's really sad. I could just, that didn't work at all. So I'm just going to keep scrubbing it out the way I've been doing it. And we'll put little shrine notches here for things not the codex. And just because I'm going to go ahead and make that the codex, we'll put fake here, bedroom, kitchen, stores, potty. Come back over here. We're going to continue drawing, but I want to come back to my last brush, which is the one I was using there. We're going to have a fake door here and a fake door here because we want to why is that? Oh. So we'll step back and fix that. And of course I'm now not drawing on what I want. I want this a little wider. Put those in there like that. Think just because I like a little bit of symmetry in things, we're going to do the same thing. And we'll put some traps out in here, and I'm thinking should have a fake door here and have a room over here. Put a fake door right there. Actually, what we'll do is we'll put a fake door right by another nook with another fancy looking book. And what we will do is we will have two rooms here. One is going to hold some kind of monster. I haven't decided what monster it is yet because I just thought about it. That the monks can release into the area. And then a little place along here that we will do where they can watch everything that goes on along here through peepholes. So they will be able to watch the player party as the player party basically raids their abode. And I think we will do the same thing off this end. Give these monks the ability to actually follow along. Whoops. That got a little too close. Follow along and spy on the player party. Because that's creepy and cool and unique. Also could be really cool if like the monster got into this. So that's our basic dungeon outline finished there. I'm going to go ahead and turn off this. And that was what? I'm looking here. That was about 22 minutes total. So I'm going to take a break. When I come back, I'm going to show you how to make this look a bit more like a map. I mean, like a dungeon map. I mean, you could use it right here. I mean, as a GM, I would actually be happy to just throw this down on the table. But as an artist, I do a little bit more. I like to turn it up to 11. So I'm going to show you how to make this perfect, honestly. But I'm going to take a break and we'll come back in just a couple minutes. Okay, while I was gone, I did a little bit of touch up because there were a couple little spots that I felt needed. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to make this really stand out in this next little section. There's a couple things we can do. I just want to be able to do this. First things we're going to do on this is we're actually going to give the map itself an outline. And because of the size that we've come up with, I think we're going to go ahead and keep the scale here because that's 5, 10, 15, 20. That's a 20-foot room, and this is 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 roughly. That's pretty good for an underground thing. Now, I told you I would show you how to do some fancy stuff with Photoshop, even though this isn't a Photoshop tutorial series. But what we're going to do is we're actually going to come over here and we are going to, I did some stuff on the break too for another project. We're going to make 1,000 by 1,000 image. Now, I'm going to use my group brushes for this, and I'm going to show you something. I have some cross-hatching brushes which allow me to just scribble and it looks like I've cross-hatched that. take that and throw that away, or not. Make a new layer. And in case you're wondering how I'm doing that, the new layer button is right there. I have my tablet set up with its quick buttons to do that and undo. Now, what we can do though is pretty impressive. We're going to make our own brush. I know this is a little meta, but I'm going to use one of my brushes that I actually like in my group brush series. The normal ones in Photoshop will work, but literally you just do this, and I actually shaped that wrong. We want it to be a crosshatch, so we want it to be a selection like that, and I still don't like that. I'm being hard. I'm gonna do this until I get it where I like it. And I push that too hard for what we're trying to do here. Nope. You don't have to be this anal retentive. This is just me. Now, this is the basics of a crosshatch brush, believe it or not. Control A to select all of it. Then come over here into your edit. Define brush preset. Oh, first we want to turn off that background. We want to come over here and define brush preset. We're going to, it calls a sample brush. We're going to call this Homemade Hatcher. And when we do that, see how big that is? That's a little silly, but that gives us the ability to see it at full size. Now, here's what's going to make it interesting. You see how it feathers there. What we want to do is, I believe it's under shape dynamics. There we go. You take your angle jitter and play with that. We're going to, no. Trying to remember where we find this. There we go. We want to save this brush set, and we're going to call it Hatcher. Click on that, and you are good to go, literally. So we're going to take this. I'm going to shrink it down to make it more useful for what we're doing. Now, if you remember from my last one, holding down Control and clicking on the thing will select it. Well, we want to work on a second layer that's got our notes. So we're going to make a new layer. We want to go to Select Inverse. Now, when you draw on a selected surface, it will only draw on the things that you select. So by control clicking on layer 1, we selected everything that's got the grid on it. By inverting that selection, now it's everything that's not got the grid on it. So when we draw around here, we get a nice cross-hatched surrounding. And see, I like that, but it needs to be a little harder. So we're going to turn up our flow a little bit. So when we do it that way, we get this really nice surrounding. And you see, I can draw on the inside like that without being picky at all. That's why we selected ahead of time. And we're going to go ahead and outline that entire thing like this. I know it seems silly, but if you take a look, that is already making that look making that stand out with a really nice look. I'm going to undo that last section because I didn't like what I did there in the middle. I want to kind of get it right there at the edge and have it a little lighter in the middle, just because it gives our map a little more depth. Oh, hey, we have a section of bleed over here. So I'm going to deselect that using Control D. I'm going to come back over here. We're going to go back to our jittery brush. And we draw a little bit. I did that wrong. Click here, then flip it. We just draw a little black there to make sure that they're not touching. There we go. And the reason it did that weird cloudy is because my flow is down from earlier. See? There we go. Now we come back over here, select our new fancy brush we made. It's going to put all of our stuff back in. We're going to Control click, and by the way, when you Control click, use your mouse, because my pen did some weird stuff the other day. Come back up to our layer, Control Shift I, which will invert it, and we're going to draw some more. Like I said, right around the edge there, I want to leave a little bit of light in the middle because it looks like your artist was a little lazy, and that is kind of, well, I'm showing you how to do this quick and dirty, so I guess we all are kind of lazy, huh? I'll have to ask Swallow from Sage Advice with Sabo. He's my best friend. He's a professional artist. I do this stuff kind of for fun, but as our books progress, we do it a little more professionally. And that actually, right there, could be used as a map right out of the box. Now, one thing I want to do, because that grid stands out a lot, is I'm actually going to leave that selected, but we're going to invert the selection. We're going to come over here to Edit. Give that layer a stroke on the inside. 5 pixels should do it. And you can't really see what I just did, but it gave it a black outline there. And the reason we're doing that is because we want to bring down our opacity a little bit on this layer. That way that grid isn't stark black. Now there's a couple ways we can continue here. We could just put notes, you know, A, B, C, D, like they do in some of the D&D books, but I'm going to be a little more powerful with this map, because I think with this secret passage going along everything, I think that we should put some lighting effects. That way we can actually see what's going on in there. And I'm going to teach you how to use the brush function. Yeah, the brush function. To make your own brushes to finish this stuff out. But right now, I'm going to take another break, but first I'm going to show you one fancy thing. We're going to put that above, and we need to start labeling this stuff. I know. This is my grid base. This is cross hatching. And we're going to, as usual, make groups. This is our base design. Drag these up into here, that way we can hide them. This is going to be our paper. Now, I have a huge collection of papers. I actually have some, oops, wrong drive. Also have, is that, yeah, that's the one. I also have some textured papers which have, they already have grids on them. No, that's not the right one. I have some that have grids on them. Is that them? Yeah, this is them. So you could be lazy, but I prefer doing it this way, the way I've done it. That way we can make adjustments. We can make the caverns bigger, smaller, just by adjusting the percentage on that that grid. And if you want more control, make it smaller, because each step will increase it and decrease it a little. When I say make it smaller, give me a sec here. We're going to cancel out of this. This image, we made it 1,000 by 1,000. If you made it 500 by 500, each percentage step is half of what it is here. So it gives you a lot more control. If you made it 250 by 250, it's a quarter of what we have here. It gives you a lot more control. I was just going quick, and I kind of like what we've got there, so we're going to stick with that today. But I could literally just change the size of this and give myself a new pattern overlay and change the scale completely and give myself a lot more control, but I'm not going to. Now, on my paper, what I'm going to do is I'm going to open. We're going to go back all the way through this since I didn't select one. My mapping textures, my brush assets, and my textured papers. Now, I really like this one because it's got the folds in it, and that reminds me of an old treasure map. So we're going to go Control A, Control C for copy, then Control V to paste it. Control T takes us into our, what is that? Yeah, transform. And we just gonna drag it out like that. Hit OK, which is the check mark, or you can hit Enter to accept it. Then multiply. And there we have pretty much what we need for a map. Now, there are a couple other things we can do if we want to get fancy and stuff, and I'm going to get fancy, but I just wanted you to see how quickly that can be done. With me, when I'm teaching you guys, it takes about twice as long, and right now we're sitting at 40 minutes, so 20 minutes and you could have a satisfactory map to use for your game. Now, again, I'm going to crank up, well, as my friends would say, I'm going to crank the volume up to 11 because I don't like doing things by halves, and we're going to make ourselves some statuary, some tables, lights, and we're going to make this a decent map. And I'm going to take a break, and we'll be back in a couple minutes. Welcome back. We're working on this map some more. Now, there's a couple ways we can proceed. The first thing I want to do really is work on lights. since this is a secretive little dungeon hidden underneath a temple, I really think that the whole thing should be a little dark and dim, and then we have light on top of that. So the best way for us to do that is to control click here. I'm going to come above our cross hatching, make a new layer called basic shadow, and we're literally just going to drop a paint bucket of black in there, and we're going to play with our no, none of those are going to work. So we're literally just going to play with our opacity a little bit. Take a look at that. That looks kind of shadowy, kind of dark, and that was the point. Now, to add lights, we got to figure out where we want our lights, really. And what I'm thinking, honestly, is our lights should be a series of lanterns and sconces. So we're going to have some radial lights, we'll have some point light sources, but what we got to do that is make another layer. We need to come over here to our brushes. I'm going to use my Limbo Puff High, but actually, you know what? Come over here to our basic brushes, our brush presets. I'm going to reset our brushes, and we'll go through here, and if you take a look, we have some stuff that works like what I've been using, honestly. So we've got that, and we're gonna actually, no, I normally come over here and use it. That's why I keep my picker up. And when we think about it, our torch light, our lantern light's going to be kind of an orangish yellow. So I'm going to put it right around in there. I'm going to turn that down, well, turn that up. Well, and we're going to just scribble some light in there. Now that's a little too much. So I'm going to actually turn the flow on that down. The reason I want to use mine is because I'm familiar with how they work. And that's about as big as that'll get. So we could just literally make a scribble here. Okay, so that turning down that flow on this one did not work. So let's go back up to 18%. There we go. We'll just go gentle. And what I've got here is a light in the main room. Now, looking at this, if it's a lantern, it's going to have some little bars in the way, and that's actually going to cause shadows. So what we want to do is come over to our eraser. We're going to use the same one, and we're going to figure out where we want those. They're going to be at a 90-degree angle, so we're going to go like, whoops. Our flow's up really high. So we're going to, and I don't want that to go all the way through. So we're going to actually just, damn, that flow is really sensitive. There we go. And do a little bit of erasing to create. That's too much, so I'm going to step back. I kind of want it to be a little bit of a V shape. So we go like that, so it'll be shadowy underneath. And I'm going to be a complete elitist snob because I do not like, I'm not familiar with the brushes from Photoshop. So I'm going to come over here, I'm going to use my Limbo Puff just because I'm that guy. Draw a little shadow underneath. close it out. Come over here. Use my limbo puff for that. Draw a little shadow underneath. And then do the same thing on the other side. Now, if you're using Photoshop, the Groot Brush Suite, which I'm using, is literally 20 bucks. That's all my fancy brushes. Those are the ones that I feel comfortable using. But there, we've got a little bit of a lantern pattern there in the middle. Now, as you see right here, we've got some places where it bleeds over. When we're done, and I'm going to do it right now on this one piece, we've got a trick. We're going to control click here, do our control shift I to invert it, select delete on that layer, and I may have to do like I say a little bit of work because it deleted everything that wasn't here, and so you see it doesn't bleed over the brick, but I know the stone, but it did over into the next hallway. And then as we go with this, we can actually play with our blending modes and get something that looks pretty good. And what we're going to do is I'm going to change my hue here a little bit to see if I can get something I like. No, that's gonna be good for now. But that's our first light. Now, yeah, I like that. Now we need to figure out where we're going to put our other lights. I'm going to put the blending mode back up so we can work with this, and we're going to come back over to our limbo puff. And I'm thinking that in the corners of the priest's room, we should have some light sources. So we draw a little bit, and at the edges we scrub it just a little bit to make it blurry, because lights don't have hard edges, and if they do, they're intentionally that way, but you don't light with hard edge lighting, you know? So we do a little bit there, because those two are going to actually touch. Do a little bit harder at the edge there. We can do the same thing all the way through. Now you could do this with a bigger brush, but I don't recommend it because this gives you a little more control and you can decide how you want it to fall. So I want kind of bright spots there in the corners. And then very lightly in the middle. A little bit of light spell there. And there's our lights for our monks. I'm gonna, like I said, I'm gonna come through and I'm gonna add some more details to the lights that will help actually define this. But for right now, this works. And because of that, we should actually, there we go. Now, you need something in the bathroom. I'm thinking right here, because we're gonna put a privy there, and it's the same kind of thing. We draw kind of a cone and make it heavier there at the beginning. And over here in the storage, I'm thinking we'd probably have a couple lights. So I'm going to actually do it this way, one from each side. Get a little spill over there. Gonna make that kind of ray-like. I'm going to come over here and we use Limbo Puff because I got a little bit that I didn't like there, so we're going to just delete that a little bit. This was our kitchen. Now, kitchens are almost always well lit, at least in my experience. So we're going to draw our hot points for it. And then our spill on the floor. And if you notice where these are crossing, it's getting a little more intense, which is the way light actually works. Now, light moves in rays, so we have a little bit of fall off into this hall. Like I said, we had a little spill here. This one is going to spill a little bit this way, just because that's kind of realistic. See? And I think over here, since this is a secret area, I think we can put a light here. This is where they get ready for their secret shit. And we don't want any light sources in this secret hallway, but we do want a little bit of light on each of these, because these are little shrines holding things. So we give them a little bit of a glow on each of those. That one will shine a little bit that way. Go back and forth like that because it's pretty focused. This is where we're going to have a secret door, and I think that this one should have a lantern like in this room, right over where they keep the actual book. So we'll go like this and make our light a little bit in there. And yes, I am bleeding over onto the rock a little bit, but keep in mind we've got this on a layer above, and I'm going to come over here and erase over here because that's bleeding into the hallway, which we intend to do. I actually intend to bleed into the hallway here in a minute, and there's a reason for that. But first, we want to make sure that we're only doing it the way we want. So Control click, Control Shift I, delete, Control D deselects. And there, I see a little bit that I need to touch up, like right here, just a little bit. Make that light a little smoother. But there is our light. I'm going to bring the basic shadow up just a little bit so you can see what that does. Come over here. Nope, lightening's not the right one. Hard light isn't it either. We may just end up, let's see what overlay does. Nope. What I may end up doing is just adjusting the opacity. Oh, huh. That would be because I was messing with the wrong layer. Lighten looks pretty good. Overlay is pretty good, especially when we turn down our opacity and play with stuff a little bit. But overlay lets us see the grid pretty easily. Now, I'm just going to put this back to normal so we can see what we're doing. But everywhere that we want to have a peephole, there should be a little light spillage. And I think that's really important. So I'm going to take this down. And actually, what we need to do is there needs to be at least one light in this hallway. So we'll give that a little bit of ray work. There we go. Now we're going to make this brush teeny tiny. Oh, you know what? I'm going to do this manually because it's being a pain in the butt. We're going to take it down to about 20. Is that 20? Is that good? Yeah. And then we're going to draw these little spots where the hidden peepholes are. Just throughout the entire complex to show where the monks can spy on people. You know, I didn't like that one. Give it a slightly different angle. We're going to put one right here because our monks are dirty. They're nasty motherfuckers. And one here, and one here, and one here. And then when we come across here, we're going to put one right there and one right there. Need to have a couple spots where they can view this main room. And then they can spy on the kitchen. Oops, that one's at an angle. They can be all kinds of spy-y and keep track of people in their domain. And I think that actually looks pretty good for our little spy network. So now what we're going to do is, once again, Control-click, Control-I, whoops, Control-Shift-I, and delete the stuff that bled over the rock. And we have a basic light profile for this dungeon. Now, I personally think we should have some lighter. I'm trying to figure out. Yeah, there we go. Just a little bit lighter in a couple spots to show just a little bit of the light sources. And yes, I know I'm gonna have to go back and delete that again. But this just lets us show where the light's coming from. And you just do little scribbly rays off of your light sources like that. It intensifies it a little bit. Okay, there we go. Intensifies it a little bit. And as usual, as I've said before, if I can do this, you can do this, because I'm not an artist. I'm a computer guy who just happens to understand how Photoshop works and enjoys doing this stuff. I think a little bit on each of these will help. Give that a little bit of ray, that way it's got some depth. Yeah. And I'm being a little carefuler or more careful in the middle of this one. Then we're gonna make that a very pale yellow and just a little bit more on each of these. Just to give it a little depth, you know? And actually what's funny is a lot of what I'm showing you here is because I'm a filmmaker and in film school, and I've got a good idea of how light works and how it should appear. So, and that I think looks pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and, for the last time, control click here, control shift I, and delete to get the stuff that bled into my rock. And there's our light profile for, now there's a couple spots because it's so thin over here that I need to erase because I bled over. But after I touch it up, like right here, doesn't need to be in my tunnels right here. Yeah, I think that looks pretty good. And I'm going to take another break. Basically, I take a break every 20 minutes because my audio recorder is a pain in the butt. And I'll take another break and we'll be back in a few. Okay. Now we've got our map, we've got our grid, we've got our lights. Now we need to put stuff in there. So what we need to do, we're going to start here in the bedroom. I think that this complex would probably be taken care of by 3 monks, so we need 3 beds. And what I'm thinking, I'm going to show you how I do this. If you think about it, a standard size bed is a couple feet wide and 5 or 6 feet long. So we can go ahead and make them and place them. So we're going to make a new item, and I'm going to make this 500 by 500 because it doesn't need to be that big. And what we're going to do is we're actually going to draw us a bed. I'm going to use my mud slice because that's my favorite. That's my favorite drawing. That's my favorite drawing. I cannot think. My favorite drawing brush is what I need to say. Drag that down over to black. We're going to make a new layer like that. And we're going to draw us a bed. Now, for what we're doing, we just need to do top down. So it's literally this simple. Oops, that is a little too big. Draw a circle. Those are the bedposts. Like that. We're going to draw a line between them. And then a line down like that. A line down like that. Well, we want them to be more parallel. The reason I'm drawing these by hand is because I think it'll look a little better on our map than if I square them up, though we could square them up a little bit. I mean, we got that right there. That's a basic bed shape, and then we could go across and across, put a pillow on it, give it a couple wrinkles, and then wrinkle the cover just a little bit like this, and we real quickly have a bed. And we need to erase there. Why? Oh, because it flows down to 11. Whoops. There we go. And that looks like a bed. And what we can do with that is hit Control A. We're going to make ourselves a brush preset called Bed. And when we come over here, we make a new layer. Select our bed in black with a full flow, a single click, and we have a bed. We transform that and we can scale it down to fit our map and rotate it for what I'm thinking. And literally just drag that over. And using the move tool and holding down Alt, we can duplicate it and move it. Just like that. Now, there's a couple ways we could proceed. We could hand draw everything, or we could go through, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw these two layers out here. We could go through, since we got a general idea what we want there, make a new one. And I'm going to actually do a whole bunch of click based on this. I'm going to come in here, we're going to grab our round and I'm going to click here and here. Those are going to be our posts. Then we're going to click once, select inverse. We're going to modify, contract by 5 pixels, and then we're going to delete that. I want it a little thicker, so we're going to step back a couple times on that. We're going to select modify by 7. There we go. Delete that, and now we have our little bed posts. Now I'm going to go, what is that? I made a layer that's empty. I'm going to go under that, and we're going to make our brush a little smaller. Come back over here, and I'm going to literally hold down Shift and click. Shift and click, Shift and click, Shift and click. Undo that one. Click, Shift click, click, Shift click. Do the same thing here. And you can see you've got a basic bed. And then you can use the exact same technique as before and go in and create a brush and apply that and use it. Then we merge that down and we have a bed. And we could draw a couple details in there now. Just put a couple wrinkles here and some wrinkles in the bed cover, a little bit of shading there, and we could turn that into a brush. I kind of like what we did before, as that gives us a more natural feel. So we're going to come back over here. We're going to go back into and use our bed brush. Make sure our flow is up. And then transform, whoops. We're going to actually step backwards, add a layer for, okay, that's our lights. Add a layer for furniture. Click once, Control, rotate that, and shrink it down just a little bit. And we do it like that. And then we reproduce it. And we do that again. And we have 3 beds for our monks. Now, let me see something here. Yeah, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to merge those 3, and then we're going to duplicate it again and again, and that's going to darken it up a little bit. And then merge them. Nope. Little trick. Turn off everything except for what you want, and then select merge. Oh, no, interesting. Well, we're going to add color anyway, so it doesn't actually matter. I'm going to toss 2 of these. And we're going to work with what we got there. Bring everything else back on. We're going to zoom in. Close my fancy brushes. Listen to my cat complain. And let's give one of them kind of a dusty blue. And we can click here. Give one of them a greenish color. And make one of them a royal purple. Whoops. And then we literally come over here, hit the white, seriously? I literally keep hitting the black lines there. Yeah, and now we have beds. Now, we're going to continue doing this. I'm going to continue making furniture for the entire place, and we're going to outfit this entire place, and then we're going to add shadows. That's going to take a little while. I think our beds should be moved just a little bit. I kind of want them up against the wall, even though the wall's a little rough, like that. And as with our last project, we need to remember where our lights fall. And we're actually going to bring our lights up above there. And this is where we need to start playing with our blend modes. That way we've got something that will actually reveal the stuff underneath. That's overlay. I kind of like that. Let's take a look at it. Yeah, that'll work well. But for right now, I'm going to take a break. The cat is whining at me, and we'll come back and work on some more of this. Okay, what I've done here is I have made a rough sketch of a rug. And yeah, it looks like crap, but when we shrink it down, I think it'll actually look pretty good in our dungeon. And there's a couple ways we can handle that. We could color directly on the dungeon floor. I'm going to try something that I'm not sure about. First of all, for the moment, I'm going to save this as a separate document. Let me make sure, nope. Make sure that we're in the right section here. And we're going to call this rug, save it as a Photoshop document. That way I can flatten the image. Actually, no, what we're going to do is we're actually going to come down here just so you can see. This is the way I've got it laid out. So we're going to do some color fills here. We want to decide what we want things to look like. So we're going to make another layer right above that one. And we're going to use our magic wand tool, holding down shift. I'm going to select these areas. And I say we should make that kind of a blood red. So we, because that's on the bottom layer. I want to do it above that with a multiply setting. And I think we should do an orange for this section and these. Make sure we're on our color layer like this. We're going to undo that because I need to make sure that I have all of the right things selected. And now we're going to do that orange. That's nasty. Let's change that orange a little bit. There we go. There we go. Come back down here to this. I think we're gonna... Whoops. I don't even know what that tool does. So we're gonna select these. And I think that all that should be the same color. So let's make it a darker red. Let's make it a more of a bright red for that. Come back up to our color layer. And then to make it stand out, we'll do kind of a sky blue on that. Come back up to our color layer. Now that's tacky, but what do you expect? Honestly, what do you expect in a temple? So, now I don't know if the brush tool, when we convert this to a brush, will actually do color, if that makes any sense. So what we're going to do is I've got it flat, I've got it saved. We're going to go ahead and flatten it so everything is together. And then we're going to, no, because that gave it a background. We're going to select all these and merge visible. That way it leaves it like that. We're going to select all. We're going to define a brush preset. And then we're going to come back over here and we're going to try it. I have no idea if it's going to bring our color in or not. But if it doesn't, then we've got another way to do it. That is exactly what I thought. It literally just gives us our lines. So if you're doing a black and white dungeon, that's a pretty cool way to do it. And actually that looks pretty sharp if you take a look there. But that doesn't capture what we want. So I'm just going to literally copy with Control-C. And we're going to paste this in here. And there is our brush. We're going to transform it. It's a little big for this room, so we're going to shrink it down just a little bit. Put it right there. Oops. Apply. Call it rug. If I can get it to rename. I've been using Photoshop for years and I still can't get the double click for renaming speed down. Okay, and because we're trying to get the grid on everything, we've been doing overlay. So we're going to have to do a trick here on our rug. We're going to have to first adjust its opacity just a little bit. But we have to come down here to our beds. We're going to click anywhere. It'll select everything but our beds. Control-Shift-I will now select our beds, and we delete that so the rug is underneath. So there we've added a rug to our location. I think it's still a little big, so I'm going to take a couple steps back. And I'm going to adjust that just a little bit. And I'm going to go ahead and make the furniture and get all the furniture in place before I come back. And then I'll show you how we take this from just a layout to looking like a realistic map. So expect a big change when I get back here.